Hi everybody, welcome to the Planet Kambo Frogcast. I'm John, I'm here with the Planet Kambo team, and we're here every week to give you something to listen to. And today we are going to talk about sex, spirituality and connection during this coronavirus lockdown, and hopefully we'll have some interesting and juicy chat for you to get your teeth into. So off we go. I know, James, you had some interesting ideas that you wanted to discuss, so I'll hand straight over to you.
Okay, great. The first one I guess I'll put into the onto the table for everybody is sex in quarantine and expectation. Because I've been curiously having this conversation with friends or couples that are in situ together, and asking people how they are, what's the currency of their sex life at the moment. Has it expanded? Has it contracted? Is it the same? What is it to be in the same space with the person that you're in a relationship with when perhaps you're not usually in that space with that person all the time? And because I know that there's been a rise in the sale of things like vibrators and dildos, kind of sex toy paraphernalia. So obviously there's an interest in the exploration of sexuality and sex in this moment. Or there has been an expectation for some people that, oh, this is the perfect moment to buy those kind of things, and maybe they're going to be used, but maybe they haven't been. Maybe they're gathering dust in a cupboard because an expectation has been placed on the table which actually isn't being met. So from my personal experience, I think my expectations of being in lockdown with a partner were that I thought, wow, well, this is just going to be great. We're just going to be able to, what else is there to do? We'll just be able to have loads of sex, and it'll be really exploratory, and we can really kind of focus on exploring the kind of the boundaries of what we have explored before, but push those. And that hasn't been the case because the dynamic of desire, and I think there's a sex and therapist writer called Esther Perel who talks about this, where the dynamic of desire requires distance, whereas love requires closeness. So love and desire in long-term relationship is a tension, because love requires us to be close for safety, but desire requires distance for us to remain erotically charged and mysterious to one another. And of course, in lockdown, distance is limited. So actually, from my experience, desire has shifted it towards there's been less desire because we don't have any distance. And other friends that I've talked to have said that their sex lives have, people that I know that are quite exploratory as a couple. I was talking to a couple the other day, and they'd found that their exploration had gone, but they'd kind of gone back to just a kind of routine, kind of a standard sexual connection rather than anything on the kind of periphery, if you like. So I don't know how that kind of measures up for everybody else in the room at the moment.
Well, one comment I'd make is that when you're together with somebody 24/7, codependency can come up, and this is something that I've definitely experienced, in relationships. And codependency will kill all sexual desire, like dead. If you're in a codependent situation where you're also transference, so if your relationship becomes more like siblings, which is or sort of flatmates, which is kind of what you have with people. When you were growing up and you're with your family, you're with them all the time. and like you said, with desire, there needs to be this sort of distance for it. Then if you are predisposed towards codependency, when you're with someone 24/7, it's very easy to slip into codependency and treating the other person like a family member or a sibling or a flatmate. So I think that what you've brought up is very valid, but that definitely codependency will creep in, if it may creep in, and that can have a instantly passion killing, just kills it dead.
Yeah, I mean, funny that you should say that, because I think of myself as quite independent. I like my own space. I like to be on my own. So, I like space for myself, just to potter and do my own things. And actually, what I think I've noticed over the last week is actually my own codependency just rearing its head, and really being conscious of that and being surprised by actually, like, oh gosh, I think I've always thought that I was quite independent, but actually this is playing out in a way that suggests codependency, which is surprising, but also perhaps, or I'm finding surprising given my conditioning, that I think that I'm such an independent person, but actually in this situation, perhaps not.
Yeah, because if you have unresolved issues like unresolved family issues or traumas, they come out in relationships, especially when you're forced into being with this person 24/7.
Yeah.
So it can really put a magnifying glass, like bring up those issues. So I think being aware of what's coming up rather than just being unconscious, because it is easy to slip into. And also the thing with codependency is it's comfortable. It's really comfortable to just allow, or not allow, but to just be unaware and just slip into this codependent situation. Is comfortable to be in codependency, but it's not healthy.
Yeah, there's a guy who I listen to called Peter Sage, and he talks about a lot of different subjects, but one of them is relationships. And he says like a relationship, the main purpose of one is it's like a crucible for you to bring up your own unresolved issues and shit in like a kind of accelerated way. So I imagine, I don't know, like I've said this before, but I think there's going to be a polarity of issues playing out. So if people are stuck together all the time, there's going to be a lot of these issues coming up, like codependency and stuff like that. But also on the other side of the spectrum, it's going to like bond people together closely as well. But I think it's natural, like if you're stuck in a situation, I mean, currently I'm not, but if you're stuck in a situation where you're in a relationship with someone, and it's only natural that that's going to come up, because I remember in the past, it's exactly what happened when you spent a lot of time with someone. It's just that's just the natural flow of the relationship, really.
It is, but there's a difference between, like, I know a couple that are together 24/7, and it works. It just works for them. It just works. They're totally fine. They're together all the time. They work together, and it totally works. So I think it does depend, but there's a difference between being together 24/7 and being fine, and being codependent. And then with codependency, you're getting your needs met through the other person. So there's a part of you that's missing, and then you're getting that need met from the other person. And I don't mean just two people coming together and getting love. What I mean is, if there's an unresolved issue in you, a need that hasn't been met or is missing from previous, from whatever issues you have, then with codependency, you're using the other person to get that need met. And that need could be whatever it is. It could be a need for attention, yeah. It could be a need for someone to mother you. It could be a need for someone to argue with, but there's certain unhealthy things that can come up that go beyond just, oh, we're together all the time and it's fine. But if you're getting your certain needs met, and the thing is, it's totally unconscious. You have to be really aware to notice when it's happening, and to be able to sort of stop and say, right, okay, I can see what's happening here. I can see that actually I'm treating this person. Oh, do apologise. My front doorbell has just gone off. So I'm going to mute myself.
All right.
You guys carry on, and I'll come back in a sec.
Yeah, I think I mean, following on from that, I can't remember the three types exactly, but there's codependent, independent, and interdependent relationships, right? And it's like an evolution of maturity, really, because I think most relationships probably are codependent, and it's all on spectrum anyway, so it depends to what degree you're codependent. But I mean, hopefully as the relationship kind of matures and you work past these issues, you get to more of a interdependent and independent stage. But with the lockdown, I guess it is kind of really revealing a lot of the codependencies that people have, because I mean, the whole situation really is codependent right now, is on a macro scale.
Well, I wonder what's because I mean, I wonder what's happening. Like, because Helen, you're in a relationship and live with somebody permanently and have done for a long time. So it's like, my experience of this was not planned. So it's a very we were not supposed to be living together. So it's bringing a lot of stuff up to the surface. But I don't know how that is for you, Helen, because you're in a different situation with someone.
Yeah, I think for everyone, whatever sort of level you're at, you're sort of exploring the next level. So for some people who weren't living together, maybe that's the case now because that's what's worked out at the time. For us, I am home a lot anyway, so is my partner. He works from home. So we sort of already got something in place that works quite well. So the biggest thing is communication, and at the moment I feel like I'm saying things that are really, really obvious, but like giving each other space and just saying things like, this is how I'm feeling today, I need this today, and just always, it's not that thing like, sorry, I'm not getting my words out here, but you sometimes expect the other person to know everything that's going on for you. So it's about treating them, they're not a mind reader, and just having conversations when things come up, so it's always there on the table to discuss. But it's been interesting from what you're saying. I've been sort of doing more work on myself because it's about two people being together, and we've always sort of agreed that going forward that we're always doing work on ourselves so that it makes us as a couple stronger. So the other day, me and Natalie, we had a full-on goddess day where we were working on our like feminine energy and bringing that up, and that was a lot of fun. Which meant that then that was something that I could then bring to the relationship again. It was nice. As you said, it gets like comfy. You're together all the time and it's nice and it's safe. But then actually exploring my own stuff again, it brought something else to the relationship again. So I don't know, Natalie, if you want to talk more about the goddess energy.
Yeah, no, well, I'm not in a relationship, but I found at this time about harnessing my own kind of goddess and this feminine energy within myself. And as you know, like sexual energy is creative energy. So I find at this time it's being creative and going into yourself, and especially as female and a man at this time, the goddess kind of energy, because you know everyone's kind of been having to be creative at this time and trying to channel that goddess energy within us.
Yeah, I mean, definitely sexual energy is the most powerful energy that we have. It's like, it's our rocket fuel. And if you think about it, like sexual energy creates life. Like you literally can create a human being with that energy. That's insane if you think about how powerful that is, and we all have it inside of us. And when you can harness it, and this is moving into things like tantra, and especially as a man, and not, is retaining, so that's not ejaculating or not doing it very often. So in order to retain the sexual energy and to be able to circulate it, and I've done some tantric work, been to a few workshops, and if any of you don't know, as a man, you can have whole body orgasms and not ejaculate. So men and women are both capable of it, and it can be difficult for a man because men tend to be the ones that are controlling during a sexual, whatever you'd call it, a sexual encounter or an sexual experience. The man tends to be the one in the masculine position controlling, and the woman is surrendering in the receiving position. But for a man to have a sort of tantric orgasm, it's a female thing. So the man has to learn to let go of that control and to surrender. And it can be very difficult for a lot of men to do that because they're so used to being in that controlling position. And it's tough for some. I've talked to some guys who it just worked instantly. They read the book by Mantak Chia, what's it called, multi-orgasmic man, and they did the techniques and it just worked. And then for other people, for other men, it can be a lot more difficult. And if you have trauma, if you have emotional blockages, that's going to also make it more difficult, because in order to be able to have a whole body orgasm, you need to be completely vulnerable and you need to be completely emotionally open. So if you're not, and you're not able to just relax and be vulnerable, then it won't happen. And also the mind, if you're in your head all the time, the mind will shut it down, and you need to be completely in the moment in your body. And if you're in your head, it won't work. And I know this from personal experience that sometimes when it feels like something's going to happen, mind instantly comes in. It's like, oh my God, is it going to happen? Is the whole body orgasm going to happen? And then that just, the feeling just disappears. It just goes. As soon as you do that, it goes. And it can be difficult. But yes, the most powerful energy that we have, and it can be harnessed, and it can be used as one path to enlightenment. Even it's definitely because sex is union. It's becoming one. It's the two becoming one, which is what that craving for sex is. That desire to express yourself sexually. Underneath that is a craving to come back to oneness. That's what's driving that.
Unity,
desire. And it's difficult because you have to be able to be vulnerable, be able to let go. And that, again, is similar with the relationships. That can put a magnifying glass on your stuff. If you've got issues, they'll come up. They will come up, and they will block you. But I remember one of the tantric practitioners that I've worked with, she says when she's with her partner and they're having a sexual experience, they go through all different kinds of emotions come up: screaming, crying, laughing, shaking. It's just all expressing itself and coming out. Similar to when people take plant medicines, actually. It's the same thing when someone uses some kind of psychedelic plant medicine or even Kambo. All this stuff can come out. And she said when she's with her partner, there's no holding back. It's almost like a therapeutic tool, sex as a therapy, that when they're in that space, then nothing is held back, and whatever comes up can come up, and that might be screaming and shouting, or whatever it needs to be.
Wow, that's powerful.
Well, I mean, yeah, go on, Helen.
I was just going to say, James, we were talking about the types of massage and things that you can do as a couple and by yourself. But I think that ties in quite well with that as well.
With like lingam and yoni massage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've I did some some work. Well, so lingam massage, so massage of the cock. I did some work with a variety of people over like the course of last year, and there was one guy who's he'd done a so I worked with him over a period of time, and he had trained kind of in the you know that the concept of the sacred prostitute. So the person that would be the you would visit with, that would be in the temple, that would be the kind of the consort between you and God. So he'd done a training for over like a year or something like that, which had its kind of foundation in that, and touched on some of the things that have been mentioned already here. So, and one of them was this Taoist practice of the cultivation of chi energy and the lingam massage, in order but using breath work. So using, that the circular breath. So, there's no pause. And then you're doing this over a period of time, is usually like 30 to 40 minutes with like massage of the penis in different ways. So then you're brushing energy around the body, you're moving it around constantly. And you get to this peak point, and this is the first time he did it with me, where you've really got to relax. You've got to kind of really surrender to it and not tense up any part of your body. Just allow everything to flow. And then it gets this crescendo, and you take 3 deep breaths, and then you clench everything. And you clench for a short amount of time, the practitioner tells you, and then you let go. And the first time I did it, it was like I was tripping. I felt like I was tripping. And I mean, it was so intense. I had never experienced anything like that within that kind of framework. And so intense, I mean, that I wept. And I was so blown away. I mean, and I wept, and I was super lucky that I was with someone that was incredibly graceful and able to, he knew how to hold space, because he was aware that this was a practice that anything could come up that might come up. So but it let go of something that was asking to be let go of, and it was just incredible. So I've done some practice with that, and I think it's really, even to not move towards that kind of heady experience, if you like, or kind of, I don't know, otherworldly experience. Even doing stuff like lingam massage and yoni massage in this moment with the partner, I did it with mine, and it was just a real. And there was no. And we're also this. Just to be clear, this isn't about ejaculation. So this, John mentioned about semen retention, or it's not. You're not climaxing. The energy is moving through you. You're not. There's no release in it apart from the release, as it were, of the kind of let go of the experience, but not ejaculation. So yeah, and I did it with him, and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful, because it was a really generous, loving experience to be had in this very kind of fraught, tense experience, and a way of physically relating with one another. And it's not it's not so like, I mean, to become a pro at it, it requires sensitivity and technique, but there are things that you can learn quite quickly. So in a situation like this, folks could, we all have access to, the internet and videos and the like.
Because as a man, as you get more and more aroused, what happens is the energy starts to build up in that area, in your groin, and it will eventually need to come out somewhere. And what doing the circular breath, what that does is that helps to dissipate the energy. Because in order to do this correctly and to not ejaculate, you need to be able to let the energy build, but then not go past the point of no return, so to speak. So breath, sound, and movement help to dissipate the energy. So doing the circular breathing and also moving your body in whatever way it wants to move your legs and your arms around, that helps to dissipate the energy. And in my experience, what I've found is that as a man, you have the point of no return. And when you're first starting out in any sexual experience, the point of no return is this point that you can reach and you can keep coming back from it. Keep getting to the point of no return, coming back, getting to the point of no return, coming back. They call it edging. So you're getting into the edge and coming back and coming back and coming back. And then it can take a long time. This can take you can do this for hours. And as you do it more and more, what will happen is the point of no return gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where you're just in the point of no return all the time. And you can rest in the point of no return. And you can actually stop everything that you're doing and just sit and meditate in it. And it just feels like this kind of orgasm feeling going through your head and going through your whole body. And I have experienced that, but it takes, it takes effort, because especially if you're addicted to ejaculating, you need to break that addiction, which is something that I've done for sure. And then you're not chasing it anymore. And it's much more like how a woman experiences her body in a sexual experience, in that it's waves, that you're riding waves and going higher and higher and higher, and there's no end. You can keep going up and up and up and up. So for a man, his desire is ejaculatory, in that it rises to this crest and then there's this big release, and then it's a crash. Whereas for a woman, it's much more like riding waves. Mantak Chia talks about this in his book, but you're riding waves and waves and waves. And when you do it like this, as I've explained, that's what you can do. You're riding these waves. And for a man, for me, it's like the point of no return is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where it's not even a point anymore. It's a state that you're in. You're in this orgasmic state. And to do that requires getting to the point of no return, coming back, getting to the point of no return, coming back, and just keep edging and edging and edging, and not going over. And then if you do, then don't beat yourself up. It takes practice. Having a strong PC muscle helps. So you can use the PC muscle, which is the muscle that you use if you're going for a wee and you need to stop the flow of urine. You would clench your PC muscle, and having a strong PC muscle helps to control that feeling. So the PC muscle is almost like the throttle on your arousal, and you can use the PC muscle what I found is, as you're getting to the point of no return, you can really clench the PC muscle, and that helps to stop you going over the edge. And then you can come back a little bit and then relax. And when you relax the PC muscle and then relax the body, then that orgasmic kind of energy, that feeling will just spread through the body. But it's difficult. It requires dedication and willpower.
So with that, do you get to a point where you just naturally want to stop then? Because I'm just wondering, like, if you're not going over the point of no return,
totally. You reach a point where you're like, okay, what you mean as in to end the experience, and just, you do. You get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to, I could carry on, but I don't, you don't need to then think, okay, well, I need to kind of finish myself off now to end it. That goes away. Once you don't crave ejaculation anymore, you don't need it anymore.
Okay.
In the book, I think in Grow Rich, they talk about semen retention as well, and harnessing that the vital energy in order to use that creativity to basically grow rich. There's a whole book on that. And Tesla
can Grow Rich. Did you say?
Did
you say?
Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, he talks about it. It's a good book, that.
Yeah, sexual transmutation.
Yeah. To be honest, I found that chapter quite confusing in a way. I wasn't sure, because I think that chapter was open to interpretation in a lot of ways. I think he was probably wary about getting too detailed about what he meant. But generally, I guess that's more of a Taoist kind of Eastern idea anyway, where you're talking about like using that sexual energy and harnessing it into something else. And in that particular case, he's talking about, personal development and success.
Well, I know for me personally, especially as I've got older, when you're young as a man, like when you're a sort of teenager and early 20s, you've got so much of that sexual energy in you that when you do ejaculate, you don't really notice it. But I found as I got older, if I would ejaculate, I would be depleted. I could feel it the next day. I don't feel that drive. You know, you lose that drive, and it takes a while to come back. It actually takes 3 weeks for a man to sort of replenish his sexual energy after ejaculating. And the older you get, the less often you should be ejaculating as a man. And I found that I just feel better. Like I've got, you know, when you go for long periods without ejaculating, you feel like supercharged all the time. And then when you do ejaculate, there's this lethargy that comes, this sort of feeling of being a bit depleted and a bit lethargic. But one thing I have found as well is if during your sexual experience you move sexual energy around your body, that you take the energy out of your groin and you move it around your body. Oh, we see it just came down, yeah. If you take the energy out of your groin and you're able to circulate that energy around you, and you've moved a lot of that energy, if you then go and ejaculate, you don't lose all of your energy. You don't feel as depleted after. That's something I've definitely noticed as well. So it mentions this in that Mantak Chia book, that he says that if you've, and he actually gives quantitative descriptions of the different types of movements of energy that you would do and how much sexual energy you'd lose. And if you've done hours and hours and hours of this practice and your whole body is lit up with sexual energy, and then you ejaculate, you're only going to lose a very small amount of your energy, because it's not about the fluid. This is the thing that's really interesting. It has nothing to do with the fluid, like your semen that's coming out. That's not what it is. It's the energy. So if you move the energy and then you ejaculate, you don't lose the energy. And as I said, it has nothing to do with fluid. This is purely an energetic thing. But you don't need to. You can move all your sexual energy around, not ejaculate, have multiple orgasms, and just not ejaculate, and that's fine. But if you do, then it doesn't matter, because you won't lose so much. But as a man, if you just do what most men do who are not doing this tantric work, and you just have your arousal build up and you ejaculate, then all of your sexual energy is expelled from the body.
Right. So you mean it's kind of more like spiritual energy that you're building up in your body, and it's kind of circulating?
Well, that's what it is. The sexual energy is your life energy. But as I said, it's nothing to do with fluid. It's not that when you ejaculate, you lose your energy because you're losing that fluid. It's not the fluid. It's an energy thing that you lose. And I know that from personal experience. I feel the difference of what it feels like.
So you build it up through circulating it, you mean?
Yeah. Again, if you just get to the point of no return, come back, get to the point of no return and come back. But if you do that circular breathing while you're doing that, you will feel it. Like that is a key. Breath is it will help to circulate that energy.
As well, it goes for women as well, because women lose their that energy each month through a menstrual cycle. So they have different practices for women as well, how they're able to kind of lessen that kind of energy loss around that time. So through different massages, breast massages, yoni massages, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've actually heard there's a thing, I think that's what they're called, is it jade eggs? Where a woman can actually learn, you can actually train to not menstruate through uterus breathing. Lucia just said, yeah. There's a technique women can do that to hold that energy.
I've used jade eggs in the past, and it's definitely recommended I recommend it to all women, because it gets you more in touch with your own yoni and how it's moving, and you feel that kind of energy building up in that area, and definitely, yeah, empowering. That's what I can say.
No, go on, James. Sorry, you go, James.
Well, I'm curious about the I was curious about the different experiences. So we're talking about the kind of holding of sexual charge, and I was thinking, okay, so I'm a man as well, but I'm a gay man. So I'm listening to your experience, John, and I'm thinking, okay, so I get what you're saying about semen retention, and I know that sense of, like, if I don't masturbate for a long time, I know that different sensation. But interestingly for me, I think when I have bum sex, when I'm the recipient, so I'm receiving, and my experience of that, and I'm not a woman, so I don't know what it's like to have vaginal sex, but I have this sense that bum sex, because we hit the G spot, is somewhat like vaginal sex in that when you orgasm from that space, it's not like a genitally focused orgasm. It's not like an orgasm from your cock. It's like a totally different, it's like a totally different experience. And if you have that orgasm from that space with no manipulation of the cock as well, if this requires any explanation, then do shout. Just because in my mind it all makes sense. But like we call them hands free. So so for gay men, if you have a hands free orgasm, it's like you're onto a winner. And it's like what you were talking about, John. You were talking about that sense of like you just got to surrender to it. When you surrender to it, the minute you can't let your mind get the minute your mind's going, oh yeah, oh God, it's a hands-free. Okay, well, we're on a hands-free because it's so good. And the minute your mind gets into it, it goes, no, going away there. I can focus, just be it, because it's such an incredible sensation. And with those, I find, or generally with like bum-focused orgasm, I don't find myself depleted, interestingly. It's usually it would be a cock-focused orgasm.
Yeah.
More than an anally focused orgasm. And I don't know whether that has any reference to the women in the group, if there's any sense of that around having a vulva.
Well, in what I learned with using the jade eggs is that I'm not very good with names, like the uterus, not the uterus, but the going inside, it's like it corresponds to a chakra system. So even when you're using the eggs, you can move it up and down, like almost like, and it corresponds with a chakra system. So that's what it kind of builds up. So I don't know if that kind of corresponds like with the anus with the man, because I know it's near the prostrate, and maybe it kind of corresponds to that kind of bouncing off and enlightening the Kundalini energy. I don't know.
I can explain. So women can have 7 different types of orgasms, and men can have 4. There's 2 orgasms that are the same. So for a man, an ejaculatory orgasm or a cock orgasm is the same as a clitoral orgasm for a woman, because the clitoris is the penis basically. When the embryo is there, the clitoris is the penis, and only the genital development changes. And when you have a clitoral orgasm and a man has an ejaculatory orgasm, you orgasm on the pudendal nerve, which is this nerve that runs inside you. And it's this short, sharp feeling, like this 5-second burst. And apparently, when a woman has a clitoral orgasm and a man has an ejaculatory orgasm, it's the same thing. So a woman can get depleted if she's only doing clitoral orgasms all the time. So for women, they can have, I've got to remember what they are, but it's like whole body, anal, vaginal, womb, cervical, and there's a couple more that I forget. And for a man, it's ejaculatory, anal, whole body, and then again there's another one that I forget. But out of all those orgasms, the 2 that will deplete you is the ejaculatory orgasm for a man and the clitoral orgasm for a woman. Not to say that they're wrong, they're not wrong, but that when you speak, James, as if you have an anal orgasm for a man, you won't be depleted. The only ones that will deplete you are those 2 that I mentioned. And the way I think about it is there's sex on 2 levels. There's sex on a physical level, which is that we are basically organisms like bacteria that just need to multiply. And that involves, the birds and the bees, it's like fluid transfer, biological process happens, a baby's created, blah, blah, blah. That's sex on a physical level. And in order to do that, the man needs to ejaculate and impregnate the woman. Then you've got sex on a spiritual level, which is union and almost like enlightenment. You know what I mean? It's like finding God through sex. And they're 2 different things. So you've got physical sex, like biological sex, And then you've got spiritual sex, which is tantra, which is a completely different thing. You're not doing it to make a baby. You're using it as a tool to become one, with God. And again, I'm using God. That's just a word. It's a heavily loaded word. I don't mean a man, the bearded man in the sky. You could just replace God with universe, divine force, whatever you want to call it. And when you think about it like that, then you see that sex is not just a thing that we do to make babies. It's actually a tool, like meditation, like yoga, like psychedelics, and all these things. It's tantric sex is spiritual sex, and that's a way for us to for union and to find union, to become one.
Yeah. I mean, so it's spiritual, it's physical, and it's a lot of it is very psychological as well. But we've already spoken about that, like getting blocked as well. I was interested, since the conversations kind of moved over to the spiritual aspects of it, and Natalie mentioned chakras. I kind of had an experience a few years back, before kind of turning 30, where like I guess a lot of like energy stuck in the lower chakras, kind of like the root, sacral and solar plexus, kind of got unleashed and kind of went, up my spine and like throughout my body. I felt like there was a lot of trapped energy there that was released, and it was kind of a weird situation at the time. But I was wondering if anyone else had experienced kind of like that release of energy from the lower chakras, kind of going up your physical and chakra system, and what that might be down to.
I've experienced it with Kundalini yoga when I'm fasted. If I've fasted for a few days and I do particular Kriya and Kundalini yoga, there was one time when I really felt this like fire in my spine. It was almost unpleasant. It was almost too much. And that's the Kundalini, which is the same. So Kundalini is chi, is your sexual energy. It's all the same thing. It's just different names for the same thing. But I've experienced it once there, and then I have, like I said, I've moved sexual energy before, so I've felt it there. But this felt different, actually. This felt hotter. This time when I did it with Kundalini energy, it was like a burning fire in my sacral area going up my spine.
Because it's depicted, isn't like the Kundalini energy is depicted as like a coiled snake symbolically at the bottom of your spine, right? And then at a certain point, well, I mean, a lot of people don't even experience it apparently, but at some points it can just get released, and it is like fire. I remember it was going up to my third eye chakra and like giving me I was getting a lot of headaches because of it as well. So
that can happen. People get what's called a Kundalini syndrome or Kundalini crisis, where the energy gets released too quickly when they're not ready for it. And it's like, if you imagine you've got a wire in your body that's of a certain capacity, and then you're firing electricity through it that's too much electricity for the size of the wire, and then you can get all these side effects that vary in severity, from headaches to hallucinations and insomnia, feeling like you're going crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a fuse that was overpowered, basically, and I was getting fatigued as well because of it. I was going through a lot of fatigue at the time, and I remember, I think I spoke to you like maybe some point after, and because at the time I was releasing a lot of fear that was probably trapped around my solar plexus, because I wasn't into any of this stuff beforehand, but this is how I started getting into chakras, and I started getting obsessed with it because I was going through it felt like a transformative process. It was bizarre. I was going through a lot of physical changes all at once, and I think I probably triggered something where it was released too soon.
But you're okay now?
Yeah, it took some time to subside, but for a while, like I went through a lot of fatigue over it, but yeah, I'm okay now.
There are people that it can take years. Some people, when this happens, that it can take like 10 or 20 years. of going through just a like really, really difficult Kundalini awakening?
Mine was quite difficult. It came unexpectedly, and it just felt like from just rising up and to the top of my crown. I remember I felt like I was like, I don't know, like floating around in spirals at the top of my crown, but not knowing how to even handle it. I think I just let it fly, and it kind of came crashing down and brought up a lot of unpleasantries. It made me sick, actually, brought up sickness through, I had a bit bad flare out of my eczema, which had me bedbound for weeks and weeks and weeks. It made me really, really, really sick. But a lot of clearing work that I had to do through that time. But now I've kind of learned how to circulate that energy, and through breathing techniques, and to still be able to cultivate that energy within myself.
Yeah, that's another good point. I remember feeling very ungrounded at the time as well, because I mean, you've got all this energy rushing through your system all at once, and yeah, it takes you to some pretty weird places. But yeah, I was really sick because of it as well. I'm just curious, because for me it happened like a couple of years ago, around 2017. Was that a similar period of time for you, or?
And no, it was a lot did happen in 2017, but this happened about maybe 5 years ago. Yeah. But it was around that time, just after I turned 30. You said something about 30. It happened around just my 30s. That's when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it played out over like at least a couple of years. So it's just interesting to find out what other people's experiences were like with it.
Yeah, after that, everything went wild.
And something else, sorry, just changing the subject a little bit, something that's just popped into my head from that book, Think and Grow Rich. He says most men don't really achieve until they're in their 40s, because when you're younger, you're so obsessed with sex and chasing women, or chasing, you know, whatever it is that you chase, that just dominates all your thinking most of the time. And then as a man, as you mature, most successful men, they didn't really reach the pinnacle of their achievements until they were in their 40s, because then at that age, that it calms down a bit, the sexual energy calms down a bit, and then you're able to channel it into more, well, into those creative pursuits. And that kind of made a lot of sense for me, because as a young man, especially when you're very young, you know, that, and I mean, I'm sure, you know, women have that as well, but when you're sort of teens and early 20s, it's all the hormones are going crazy, and that the sexual energy is so strong, and then it does, as you mature, it does calm down and becomes more manageable. So I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, definitely, I can relate to that.
What about celibacy, guys? What's everyone's view on celibacy? Because I think after that Kundalini awakening, I went through a period of celibacy and going into my sexuality, and so my views on celibacy has kind of changed since then. I just wanted to hear everyone's views on celibacy.
Yeah, I went through a similar period where I was kind of getting away from sex, essentially, and I spoke to John, you know, Sasha. He went through a similar thing, and yeah, we kind of went through this kind of like sort of monastic phase where we just became, well, I remember myself and this other guy, Sasha, we just went through this spiritual phase where we kind of got into like a lot more about resolving kind of emotional trauma and like unresolved issues and this kind of these areas. But yeah, I mean, slowly that passes, because I think too much of anything can be bad, and it's all about balance anyway. So yeah, I mean, I definitely went through that phase. and it was quite it felt quite what's the right word? It felt like I got a lot of things in order and sorted out my house in that area, and cleared up a lot of unresolved things, and that I could go out and become I felt I matured a lot more in that period.
I felt like I suppressed my sexual energy.
What are going through that phase of celibacy?
Celibacy, and that's what kind of taught me about suppressing. Like from celibacy is okay for a period, it can be, but it also taught me the other side of suppressing our sexuality, you know, and our urges.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're suppressing it too much, it's a problem as well. I mean, really, you just it's kind of about managing the energies inside of you, really.
But also personal choice. There are some people who just prefer to be celibate, and they're happy, you know, much happier on their own. That's totally fine. Because you don't need a relationship to be happy. Not everybody does.
No.
Some people are perfectly happy on their own, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got a different path. So, like, some people can go to, you know, become a monk for 20 years and they're okay with that. But other people would struggle with that lifestyle for too long.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Well, I did a period of celibacy, Natalie, after I'd come out of a long-term relationship, and I did it specifically because I was committed to not distracting myself from how much pain I felt. So I was in grief, and so I knew that what I could do is go, as a gay man, I could just go and shag constantly and just offload my grief and sadness onto other people. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to just hold it and go, okay, this isn't anybody else's, this is mine, and I should deal with it, and I'll do this for a period of time. So I did. I can't remember how long, maybe like 7 months, something like that. And I thought it was really grounding. I mean, it was in combination with a lot of other things as well, of other kind of spiritual practice, but I found it really grounding, and it reminded me actually of the kind of core strength of myself, to make a choice that worked well for me, and not to fall back into, you know, kind of social traps of what I should or shouldn't do, you know, post breakup. So, but I couldn't be permanently.
I was going to say, sex can be used again, like you said, to upload your emotions, you know.
Yeah, completely. There's I was reminded of now we've kind of come full circle of the connection of spirituality and sex, and I was reminded of a long-term relationship I had that ended about 10 years ago with somebody that I loved very, very, very deeply. Probably the person that I loved deeply on a level that I had never experienced, you know, like it was that kind of core shaking love. And at the time I wouldn't have used this language, because this kind of spiritual life had yet to kind of reveal itself or unfold quite so much. But I remember the sexual connection we had was, it was something that I hadn't experienced before, and now I look back and I'm able to see it and look at it as this. It was this kind of unfolding, which included which included vulnerability and surrender, and this kind of, there was no race, there wasn't a finish line. So it wasn't about coming, it was just about the exploration of sex and sexuality and what that brings up with another person that I loved. And there was this, I have this, I remember it and think of how, for me, it was this kind of godlike experience of being with another human being in such an incredibly beautiful state so often, that would just while away hours. And it was so, I don't think I have ever experienced that sensibility again that I experienced with that person for a long period of time. I don't think I've ever had it with another person that was so, it took me beyond the boundaries of what physical sex is, and it took me into another state of a place of, I don't know, however we want to call it, consciousness, or I don't know, spiritual expansion. I'm not sure, but it transcended everything that I'd ever known. And maybe that was to do with, John was talking about vulnerability earlier, and I was incredibly vulnerable in that relationship because I loved this person deeply and wanted to be. So sex can be utterly like transformational,
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, the problem is I've been chasing it ever since. I've been like, oh my God, I totally like, I want to have that kind of sex again. Please, when am I going to meet somebody that can have that kind of sex again? And it's just like, I've never managed it. I've never managed to get to that place again. Apart from maybe like, sex on mushrooms. but I'm like, but this was like sober sex. Like conscious sober sex, not like, it was like just two people and nothing else, and that's it. So
what's it like on mushrooms, James? I've never we talked about how it can get you to altered states anyway, but I guess if you're already there.
Well, I'm not recommending people do anything in quarantine, but I will say that I like, that the elusive, what I'm calling a hands-free orgasm, and I guess we're calling a whole body orgasm maybe. Yeah. I had one of those the other day with mushrooms, because it just allowed everything just to kind of just to blossom, and then, and that's not a common, like, that's not a given. It's relatively rare for me, so I would recommend it, but with somebody that you like a lot, preferably.
I'm curious to get your take on this, John, because we've talked about Mantak Chia and the multi-orgasmic man. In it, he says that like throughout a man's life, on average there's about like 2,000 times that they can ejaculate, or something like that, 2,000, 3,000. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, because we talked about as you get older you feel more depleted and lethargic afterwards. So
yeah, there's another theory, I can't remember where exactly it came from, but that you have this reserve of energy called ojas, and every time you ejaculate you deplete some of that ojas, and it will never go back, and there's a limited amount. So if you, as a man, let's just say theoretically you just ejaculated every day for non-stop, it actually will kill you in the end, because you'll just deplete your life force energy to the point where it won't replenish. I don't know. I can't tell you that for sure. It's just something that's come up that sticks in my mind. But if you think of, we talked about earlier, it's like that energy is the most powerful energy that you have. And if you waste it, then you feel it, And here's the thing as well, if you're a man and you're ejaculating all the time, like you say you're ejaculating multiple times a week, you don't realize how depleted you feel because you feel depleted all the time. So there's a hangover after ejaculating, you get a hangover. And when you go for long periods without ejaculating and then you do, you feel it. And that's the thing. If you're stuck in this ejaculation cycle where you're just ejaculating all the time, you don't realize how depleted you are. You just got used to it. It's just how you feel. When you go for a long period without, then you start to realize how good you feel, how supercharged you feel. And then if you do ejaculate, then you'll feel depleted after. So, yeah, I mean, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. Experience it for yourself. If you're a man and you're ejaculating all the time, just stop. Stop for a month. Don't ejaculate for a month and see how good you feel, how motivated you are, and yeah, and see if that makes a difference for you. Maybe not. Maybe for some guys it's not like that, but I know for me it is. And it's just an addiction. Once you can break that addiction, you don't crave it anymore. And then you're not chasing anything. Rather, as most men, when they have sex, they're just chasing ejaculation. That's all they're doing. And if you can break the addiction to it, then you're not chasing anything anymore. And you can be more present.
No FAP is the way forward once you get into your 30s. Yeah.
I've been doing it for years, like over 10 years. Very, very rarely do I ejaculate. Very rarely.
Yeah, I guess you've got to condition yourself to kind of.
Yeah, it's just a habit. You break it. Once you break it, you don't. The thing is, it's weird. It almost feels too intense. Once you stop doing it, when you do it, it's too much. That feeling is too sharp and too intense. And actually what you prefer is a softer, more expansive feeling. Like I said earlier, rather than being this like thing, this crescendo that you go up and you reach this crest and then you crash down. It's to sort of be riding waves actually feels a lot nicer than an ejaculatory orgasm, which is very sharp, short, sharp feeling.
Well, this goes to another point as well, because when you stop and like we were talking about the celibacy stage, you actually need to build up reserves. This was my experience. You need to get used to like being able to hold that energy, because otherwise it gets too much.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there are practices. One would be cultivating that sexual energy. So if the energy is building up, then cultivate, as in have a sexual experience, but move the energy around. The reason it gets too much is because it's too concentrated in your groin.
Yeah.
And it's got to go somewhere. So it's just going to want to shoot. It's got to go. It's either going to go out or it's going to go up. So it's either going to go up your spine or it's going to go out the end of your penis. So you need to, like, once your sexual energy is moving and it's moving around, then you won't feel that feeling of it getting too much.
Yeah, I mean, it can take quite a while, because you need to go through phases of like holding that amount of energy and then getting used to it, because otherwise, again, it goes back to that circuit analogy. It's like there's too much power in the circuit because you feel it. But yeah, I get what you're saying with circulating it. You have to do that naturally, and it feels like there's certain blockages at certain points, like talking about the chakra system again. Like you actually have to clear. It's almost like cleaning out the pipes so they can kind of hold more of it.
There's also something called de-armouring that is a tantric practice. So we'll have points in our body, externally and internally, that are like knots in a muscle. So you know when you go for a massage, a sports massage, you'll have a knot in a muscle, and the massage therapist will find that knot, and through pressure he releases it. Well, we have these knots in our bodies, men and women, that will block your sexual energy from moving. And men and women have them on the outside of their body, but you also have them internally. So women will have them inside their vagina, and men will have them up their backside. And if you, with a tantric practitioner, you can have an internal massage where you can find these points, and they can press on them, and they will release. But when you do this work, it can bring up a lot of emotional pain, because those knots are where you store your emotions. So if you're completely de-armored, you'll find your sexual energy will flow a lot easier. But especially for men, most men hold all that tension, and it's all concentrated in their backside. And that's why a lot of guys are like, no one's going near it, because it's too painful. It really hurts. It hurts. But once you've gone through that, and you've done some work on that, and it releases, and actually it can feel pleasurable. It's actually an erogenous zone, not pain. And for a lot of women who feel pain during sex, where during penetration they're feeling pain, it's because it's armoring inside the vagina. And when that armoring has been softened, then they don't feel pain anymore. It's literally like if you've got a load of knots in a muscle, like I get it in my rhomboids, underneath my shoulder blades. When I get knots there, they drive me mad. I have to go on a roller or something to get rid of them. And it's the same thing. If you've got knots in the muscle inside you, those knots are holding emotional tension, and they will block your sexual energy from moving.
That makes a lot of sense, John, because that's exactly what the jade eggs do, right. Massage inside and also kind of strengthen it as well. Yeah.
And it's about softening those areas. So to feel sexual pleasure, you can't have tight, stiff muscles in an erogenous zone. It's just not going to work. So through this de-armoring process, when that whole area softens, then pleasure and sexual energy can flow. So for a lot of guys and girls, if you've got a lot of armoring, it doesn't matter how much you try, you're not going to move your sexual energy. It ain't going to work. It just won't go. And I know this from personal experience. Having tried it, doesn't work, done some de-armoring work with practitioners, and suddenly it's like, oh, okay, that's different. That feels different now. It's trauma. We hold trauma in those areas. Especially as men, we clench. If you're threatened, we tend to go like that, and you clench everything, and that will create these knots inside you. So yeah, I mean, if you find a good tantric practitioner, if anyone's interested, most of them will do de-armoring work. They might call it something else. In men, they call it sacred spot work sometimes, which would be prostate de-armoring. But yeah.
Yeah, the first time I heard that term de-armouring was only a couple of weeks ago, and it was Sasha actually who brought it up. He was making some jokes about it. About de-armouring his ass, but
it works. It works.
Yeah,
it does work. Like I can say that wholeheartedly. And like as James was talking about earlier, where you had what you call a hands-free. If you had loads of armoring, it wouldn't have happened. That area needs to be open and softened in order for that to happen. So I'd imagine for a lot of gay men that it's a natural thing that happens, de-armoring. It just happens through the sexual practices that you would do.
Well, yeah, I guess in some ways, but I think personal experience would also tell me that there are a lot of gay men that in the same way hold trauma in their bums and then make sexual preference choices around whether they are active or passive or tops or bottoms because of that. So things become off limits, and actually, I mean, in my experience, the flow of pleasure that you can experience as a gay man, is both includes, the totality of the sexual choices available, not just one or the other. So I guess, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying though. I totally get what you're saying. It makes complete sense. And there's a practitioner, a guy that's called A.A. Bronson, he was a big kind of 60s, 70s, prolific artist in Canada. And he does that work now with like prostate massage to get rid. But so it brings up stuff that may be painful and upsetting, but then you let it go. So
yeah. Okay, I think we've been going for quite a while now, over an hour. So it may be a good time to start wrapping up. But that was good. It's been a great podcast. Very informative.
Yeah, I mean, it's flowed quite well, and coming to talking about prostate massages is probably a good place to end it. So
yeah.
All right, guys, any final thoughts?
Helen Bevan chose sex, so it should be up to Helen Bevan to come up with the conclusion.
Enjoy yourselves.
That's it. Yeah, I'll second that.
Be responsible.
Yeah.
Communicate your desire, because it's your own, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So learning to communicate your desire is like super fun and super healthy and joyful. So do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.
See you.
Take care.
Thank you.